What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another NHL DFS Strategy Show sponsored by Prize Picks. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always, a man who is steamrolling his way through this lovely Wednesday afternoon. Slim Cliffy, how are we doing today?
Not bad. Still fighting the steamroller in the construction going on behind in the street behind me. It is what it is, but pretty good slate last night. I did reasonably well. Went about nearly 4x. Finished sixth in the $20 3 max. If I had gone Jacob Trouba instead of Adam Fox, I would have shipped it. I mean, that's kind of the nature of playing a single lineup, especially on a short slate. Kind of mad at myself because you were on Trouba yesterday. You were hyping him up. I just went with the old Rangers power play stack. Still did pretty well, but could have done a lot better, but won't complain for the first night out.
Yeah, I had too many Kings. And, man, I see our chat riled up already. I see Bobby Boom has already taken his Scrooge McDuck high dive into a nice pile of snow, but you guys are all riled up. We love to see it here. So while I have you here, give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. So, yeah, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. It helps us bring you shows as much as we can. Our plan is 4 games or more. We did a special 2-gamer yesterday, but you kind of saw like a 2-gamer, especially in MME, it's such a fickle beast. You could have like the perfect lineup and you have the wrong punt defenseman. You go from winning like thousands to like barely min cashing. So 2-game slates, not the best. 6 games, I thoroughly enjoy. It's my favorite slate size, like 5 to 8 games is that sweet spot. The problem is today that DraftKings kind of blindfolded themselves when making the prices. It is very soft today. There are a lot of value lines that I like. The problem is I don't think you need the value because there's a lot of lines in really good spots, like top lines that are really cheap. So what are your thoughts on this slate?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that stands out to me, and I'll just bring up our top stacks tool here real quick. If you look at the lineup salaries over on DraftKings, the most expensive line is $20,600. It's the Toronto top line. We'll get to them in a second. Every other line here today, at least even strength line, is under $20K. Over on FanDuel, still not that bad. You have Toronto and Colorado that are fairly expensive. Edmonton, a little over $20K, but it's all pretty reasonable prices. And that's not something that we'll see as the season wears on, because you'll see dynamic pricing affect lines later in the season. A couple seasons ago, the Boston top line on DraftKings was like $25,000 every night once they really started rolling. So, if the Colorado top line really starts shelling teams early in the season or something like that, you'll see the prices climb. But for now, there is a lot of very reasonably priced lines, even the elite lines. So I think it could end up spreading ownership out a little bit, especially when you look at secondary lines. Like, I don't think you'll see, there are some very low owned secondary lines that I like, but I think you'll see a lot of the popular ones even still end up, 8, 9, 10, maybe 12% or something like that, which is, perfectly fine on a slate of this size. So pretty excited to see. I haven't done my fantasy crunching yet. Pretty excited to see what I could come up with. But soft-ish pricing, at least over on DraftKings here to start. And we'll talk about a few of those players.
Yeah, so why don't we get into these games here? I just wanted to give a quick shout out. We got a message on Twitter this morning. Our man Gary shipped the Minimax opening night. You love to see big wins early. That's some good ROI there. Congratulations to you. We returned almost $600 on $60 in entries. And if you're only playing $60 a night, $600 goes a long way to helping you sustain that, especially early in the season. So congrats to you. A couple other guys in our Discord did well. Our good pal Saul Goodman won about 7,000 tickets to the Spinorama tonight. So we expect to see his fake lawyer ass up at the top of the leaderboards tonight. So we're looking forward to that. So congrats to you guys, and let's hop into that slate. First game of the night, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs with a 4.0 total heading into Montreal. Canadiens have a 2.7 total. Now, John Tavares is in tonight. Matt Murray's confirmed. Jake Allen also confirmed. Now, the Canadiens are not going to be great this year. That being said, their offensive lines, like top 6, top 9 even, aren't that bad. They will score this season. The problem is, like, that second line of Monahan, Kirby Dach, and Mike Hoffman might be one of the worst defensive lines in the league, along with like one others that we'll talk about tonight. But yeah, defensively, the Canadiens are going to be quite a mess. Their blue line, there's guys I haven't even heard of. I had to like look up pronunciations on some of these guys. Like, I've never heard of them before. So they're going to have some issues on the blue lines, but I think this is a team that can score. And we know that, the Leafs have had issues on the blue line. This probably is their best blue line in a while. In terms of depth, it's just, I'm not a huge fan of the Toronto depth for DFS. So for me, it's probably just going to be, top line or power play. That's probably where I'm going to be tonight. But there is some stuff on both sides that I like in this game. What do you think?
Yeah, it's worth pointing out what the implied goal total is for Montreal here, right? Like, they're, like you said, sitting at 2.7. It's only 0.1 goals fewer than Boston. We'll get to them. It's more than Columbus. It's more than Chicago. It's just under Vancouver and Seattle. So it's not like they're expecting absolutely nothing from Montreal. And I agree with you. We'll talk about the blue line in a second. The blue line is a whole other story, but at least up front, we'll go line by line here, but you can see a pretty good top 9 if everybody plays to their ability. But the problem is maybe you have a couple questions about the Toronto depth, but that Toronto top line was the best line in hockey last year. Matthews, Marner, and Bunting, 6.3 goals, I believe 6.3 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They outscored 7 power plays last year on a per 60-minute basis, like team-wide power plays. They're just absolutely absurd offensively, and of course they play a lot of minutes as well. And maybe they don't play them a ton early in the season, but they're fresh now, so why not play them 21 or maybe even 22 minutes or something like that? So obviously Toronto is probably going to be one of the higher owned teams on the night. Our top stacks tool has one of the Colorado top line a little bit higher owned, but Toronto just underneath them over 20%. So there's going to be a lot of ownership here. But, the Montreal blue line, maybe the forwards are going to play well, but that blue line is looking real rough. Mike Matheson isn't going to be playing. Joel Edmondson is still out. Not like they're amazing defensemen, but when you have Caden Gooley, Arbor Zikash, Jordan Harris, and Jonathan Kovacevic having 14 total NHL games between them, the elder statesman is Chris Weidman, and he wasn't even a regular NHLer until he was like 27 or 28 or something like that. So I think Toronto's top line should be able to throw around the puck quite a bit in the offensive zone here tonight. I have no problem with playing them. It's just a matter of which top lines are you going to go with, because there are a lot of great top lines on this slate here tonight. And maybe the Montreal, we'll see how the matchups kind of work out. Where, I would expect Nick Suzuki to go out against the top line. I don't, as good as the Montreal turnaround was after Martin St. Louis was hired as coach in February last year. I think it was February, maybe it was January. The defense still did improve, and the blue line doesn't look a whole lot better. So I think, very good reason the Toronto top line is at the top of the mountain for trios to use here tonight. But it's the Toronto second line that's actually really interesting to me. Without Alexander Kerfoot on that line last year, Tavares and Nylander generated 3.4 expected goals per 60 minutes, which is really high. Like we just talked about how great the Toronto top line was. They're at 3.6 last year. So that second line could be really, really good. Dennis Mulligan is kind of an unknown. He spent 2.5 seasons playing in Europe during all the COVID pauses and all that. But earlier, he's still a young guy. I think he's only 25 or 26. When he was in Florida, some of his, underlying stats were excellent. 95th percentile zone exit rate, 83rd percentile zone entry rate, 80th percentile shot assist. Now, shot assists are passes that lead to shots by your teammates. So he did a lot of things that could really help generate offense for his teammates. And that was over a couple seasons. There's a reason why he played his way up to the second line during the preseason. So I really kind of like that Toronto second line here tonight. You get a couple guys on the power play. The ownership isn't out of control. We're looking, 3 to 4% by our top stacks over on DraftKings. If you want to take a shot at them over on FanDuel, a little bit higher, but still only around 5%. Throwing, maybe a power play stack with Austin Matthews or add Morgan Riley on the blue line, something like that. I do like that Toronto second line going into the second and third lines here from Montreal, because I don't know, you mentioned that Hoffman line, Hoffman, Dak, and Monahan. Like, I have a lot of faith in Kirby Dach, but it's one of those things like we have to see him turn around his play from his injuries. And same thing with Sean Monahan. We have to see him turn around his plays from all the injuries he's had over the last few years before we could really rely on them being the players they were, 3 years ago or whatever. So I do like that Toronto second line here tonight. If you want to throw in a Matthews or a Riley, I think that's perfectly fine as well. I do like the Montreal top line here as well. I think Toronto is going to be pretty good defensively, but I think goaltending is definitely a question mark for them with Matt Murray in net. How he plays still remains to be seen. So Montreal 1, Toronto 2, or Toronto, / Toronto power play out of this game. On the blue line, like on the Montreal side, there just really isn't a lot. Like Chris Weidman is kind of the definition of empty power play minutes, like the old Keith Yandel issue. It's like if he doesn't get 2 power play assists, he's probably not going to do anything else. I mean, maybe he gets a lot of ice time with all the injuries and whatnot they have, but there's just not a lot I like on the Montreal blue line. On the Toronto blue line, I think Mark Giordano is perfectly fine in that, low mid-range price if you don't want to pay all the way up for Morgan Riley. So that's where I am. Montreal, Toronto 2 / Toronto power play, and maybe some Mark Giordano on the blue line.
Yeah, I agree with almost everything you say. The only thing I want to add on is Tavares wasn't healthy during the season, and he is fairly pricey on DK. That being said, they're a 4 total, and they're coming in right now at 5%. So I think from an ownership standpoint, I do agree that second line does interest me more just from an ownership play, and you get the power play one time. I think if you really love Toronto one, there's plenty of ways to get different on this slate. You could also just straight up power play stack them. You're going to get 2 high owned guys, 2 low owned guys. Or if you want to leave bunting off, add a Nylander, and I think that's fine. The thing that I worry about leaving off bunting is they're on elite 5-on-5 line. So if they get there 5-on-5, you're going to miss out on the bunting stuff. But again, last year, the Canadiens penalty kill was awful. I can't see it getting much better. On the Canadian side, I agree with you. I do like that top line. They're coming in low owned. Yes, they're probably going to see a fair bit of the Matthews Marner line. But again, like Matt Murray had a decent season with the Senators last year, but he is a unknown. The Leafs goaltending has been their biggest question mark the past few years. So I don't mind taking some stabs on a low on Montreal 1. I kind of agree with you on the blue line. Like it's really just Morgan Riley for me. You want to play Mark Giordano, I think that's fine. But like for me, like I just have trouble playing Maple Leaf defenders outside of Riley unless, Riley's out and you get someone like Rasmus Sandin on the top power play. So, and then on the Canadian side, like maybe I'd have interest in David Savard if he was 2,900, but at 4,900, even if he plays like 27 minutes, I probably can find better value for the price.
And one last thing I just want to mention is that Dvorak Gallagher duo for Montreal. They had a turnaround under Martin St. Louis as well. I know Gallagher was fighting injuries at times, but they are at 2.9 expected goals generated once Martin St. Louis came in. They'll probably get, those middle 6 matchups from Toronto. So if you want to get away from that dominant matchup and go with what is a pretty cheap duo, I don't mind Dvorak and Gallagher either as kind of like that fillery type duo that you can go with, and there's not going to be much ownership on them. I don't think you have to include Slafkovsky. They've left him off the power plays. Like I might not go the full trio, but Dvorak and Gallagher, or just Gallagher as a one-off, I don't mind them as well.
Yeah, any interest in the goalies? Matt Murray is super expensive on DraftKings, but he is very cheap on FanDuel. I think for me, Murray is a FanDuel play. Jake Allen, I'd just take a stab if I'm looking for someone cheap to get volume.
Yeah, Jake Allen, I would probably be the cheap goalie that I would look towards tonight over on DraftKings. We have him second by expected saves on the slate. It's just that we also have him expected to give up 4 goals.
Yeah.
You are facing the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he played Toronto pretty well last year. I mean, I think 3 games, only allowed 4 goals against total against them or something like that. So, you don't want to rely on just a 3-game sample, but the Montreal-Toronto rivalry is a thing. And they are games that the Habs players do kind of get up for. So especially where you got a home opener, hopefully they could send the fans home happy. I don't mind Jake Allen, sprinkling some Jake Allen in your lineups for a cheap goal.
For sure. So let's move on to the next game. We have the Boston Bruins with the 2.8 total heading into Washington to face the Capitals. The Capitals have a 3.3 total. Darcy Kemper is confirmed. Linus Ullmark is probable. For Boston, Marchand is still recovering from hip surgery. He's out. Charlie McAvoy is out. For Washington, they're starting the season without Nicholas Backstrom and Tom Wilson. Bruins, I don't want to, come on here and just slander everyone's models here, but I've seen a lot of these season models have the Bruins having 110 points and winning their division, but they're so banged up right now. They have David Krejci coming back, who is retired and out of hockey for a few years. Bergeron he's older now. He's had a ton of injuries. Marchand's out. Pasternak's on the second line. Pavel Zacha is in the top 6. They're just so banged up right now. It would be shocking to me if they got off to a really hot start. And then on the Capital side, they're missing Backstrom and Wilson, but they brought in Dylan Strome. They brought in Connor Brown. They still have decent depth. I just having a hard time getting onto some Bruins tonight. I think this is a Capitals game for me. And on top of that, I hate stacking the Capitals, but they do have a 3.3 total at home, and they're seeing some fairly low ownership. So do you like both sides in this game, or are you leading the Caps as well?
Yeah, I'm with you on Boston. I'm kind of worried about that team. I'm worried about not having Brad Marchand. I think Charlie McAvoy's going to hurt them defensively. but they're still a pretty good defensive team. They've got three, at least two really good defensive lines, possibly a third, depending how David Krejci fares returning from his season abroad. But I still think even with McAvoy out, they're going to be a pretty good defensive team. I'm just wondering how especially the Boston power play works out without Marchand there, because he's been a pretty big part of that power play for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years now. Definitely one of the better, dual threat wingers that there is in hockey. He's a guy that can score 35, 40 goals and a guy that can also put up like 50, 60 assists. Like, you can't just really, slide in, Jake DeBrusk and expect things to just kind of move along. And, what kind of, Taylor Hall is playing, but as of like 8 days ago, they said he was week to week. So maybe, they overestimated how long he'd be out with whatever injury he's had. But is he even 100%? And Washington was a good defensive team last year, right? Like top 10 by expected goals against in the league. And they didn't, they are missing a couple guys, but they were missing Backstrom a fair bit last year. They didn't really lose a ton on the blue line. So, like, I suspect that Washington's going to be pretty good defensively again. Like, especially when you have like Oshie and Eller on your third line, like that'd be a really good defensive duo that can probably shut down the top Boston line. So I'm not super excited about playing Boston 1 here tonight. And when I look over at their ownership, like there's nothing really special. Like they're basically on par over on FanDuel, and yeah, they have good leverage over on DraftKings. But with Taylor Hall back, Jake DeBrusk has been booted off the power play, so you're not getting perfect correlation with that top line. It always feels bad fading Boston 1 or fading Boston, but I agree with you. I don't think this is a Boston game for me. On the Washington side, I think the addition of Connor Brown is fairly underrated. Like, this is a guy that is kind of like a switchblade. Like, he can really do it all. He's decent defensively. He's a good playmaker. He can score goals. Like, he's got good, offensive and defensive impact metrics. So, like, I think he could really make a difference on that top line for Washington. So, I don't mind playing a little bit of Washington 1 here tonight. You don't need a lot to get over the field, right? That's the thing, is like if you're playing 50 lineups, if you have 5 Washington 1 lineups, you're probably going to be over the field. Like, you don't need a lot here tonight. And missing McAvoy is a hit to their blue line. Like, Mike Riley is a good defenseman, but he's not great defensively. Jakob Zaboral and Derek Forbort, like, maybe fine defensively, but they can't generate offense, so they might spend some time defending in their own zone. Like, I do kind of like, maybe sprinkling in some Washington 1 here. As far as the second Washington line goes, I'm wondering how much they actually play together, because Alexei Protas is skating with Dylan Strome and Anthony Mantha. And it seemed like last year Protas was a guy, like, maybe he gets slaughtered on the second line, but he'd play 11 minutes. Or maybe he gets slaughtered on the third line, but he'd play 9 minutes. We kind of saw that with Vegas last night, actually, with Michael Amadio only playing 9 minutes. You saw with Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay had like 5 forwards play under 10 minutes last night, as they allocated a lot more time to the top lines. And I think you might see something like that here with Washington. So Washington top line probably for me here tonight, especially where they're probably going to go against the second and third lines from Boston. They're going to avoid Patrice Bergeron when they can. So I do like a little bit of Washington 1 here tonight. The thing with Krejci playing with David Pastrnak is they did play a little bit together before Krejci went over to Europe. They didn't really have great numbers. 2.0 expected goals for, 2.4 against. Actual goals scored is only 2.8 per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Like, it's fine, but it's definitely not great. The ownership is fine, but they are a little bit expensive. Like, that Boston second line coming in at $16,900 on DraftKings. They're basically the same price as the Edmonton second line. And, we'll talk about them later, but not a bad matchup for Edmonton. So I think it's just Washington 1 or nothing else for me out of this game. On the blue line, they have Hampus Lindholm running the top power play unit, he doesn't really have great power play impacts for his career. Like he's not Charlie McAvoy. I'd honestly rather even see Mike Riley probably get a crack at the top power play unit than Hampus Lindholm.
Yeah.
So I think he's fine to play at 5,200, but there's really no reason to play him when you have, Darnell Nurse, we'll talk about him later, 5,500, Zach Werenski, 5,600, even, a couple Edmonton guys in the mid fours. I think there are better plays in that price range, at least over on DraftKings. So not really in on Lindholm. Don't mind Mike Riley. He's a good puck moving defenseman, kind of gets a bad rap. Doesn't need a lot to really pay off his price, so don't mind him kind of as punty type. That's about it. I don't even like much on the Washington side for defensemen. I think John Carlson is far too expensive, at least when we're looking at DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, he's a little bit more reasonably priced, but I just don't really see a lot of defensemen that I like in this game. So that's kind of where I'm at. Maybe a little bit of Washington 1. And that's probably it. Kind of feels bad because they are expecting, 6 goals in this game, but I think we could see it end up kind of like the Lightning game last night where it's a 3-1 final or 4-1 final or something like that.
Yeah. Like the Capitals always have fairly high totals, and I always find myself coming in under the field. It's just, I don't know, I just feel like they price in Ovechkin never getting guarded on the power play. You know what I mean? Like he's just sitting in his office with no one around him and he'll score a power play goal. But I don't know. Boston's still a decently good defensive team. Marchand's a huge, the one thing that worries me, like you mentioned, Marchand's big on the power play, but he's also really big on the penalty kill. And that does worry me a little bit, but I don't know. Dylan Strome's new to the power play. I just don't know how it's all going to mesh, and they still have good, the Bruins still have good penalty killers without Marchand. I just, despite them expecting 6 goals, I just find myself advised MMing being under the field here on both sides. There's nothing that really jumps off the page for me. And I see a couple super chats. Let me get to that real quick. I see Nicholas Barrett said $4.99 super chat. Thank you very much. He said, "Sup, boys? Pumped for another season. How would you approach the Spinorama tonight? I'm only a 1 to 2 entry guy. I know it's a bit tough being a 27 max. So I usually single entry. I have an entry in there tonight. I know this is going to sound like really simple advice, but you just got to play your guys. If there's a line really you play them. It doesn't matter what the ownership is. There's plenty of ways to differentiate. If you're in love with a line and it's the highest owned line on the night, I'd rather play them knowing they're going to be chalky than overthink it and fade them because of ownership and them being in the optimal lineup. So play your guys. There's plenty of ways to get different. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't galaxy brain this. There are 12 teams playing tonight. There are a few heavy ownership spots, but because of all the top lines that we do have playing here tonight, Toronto 1, Colorado 1, Edmonton 1, even I'd even throw Washington 1 and Carolina 1 into that mix. Different pricing and all that, but there are a lot of really good top lines here tonight. So don't galaxy brain the ownership. I would just kind of go with the lineup that you put together that you like best, whether it's 1, 2, 3 entries or something like that. Once, if you get to 20 or 25, 28 entries, I think it's a little bit different. You got to kind of start figuring in your exposures. But I would just go with the lineup that you put together that you like best. Maybe pick the brains of a couple people that you talk hockey with and see where they're going and all that. And just kind of cross your fingers. Anything can happen in one night of hockey.
Yep. And then we got a $5 super chat from our neighborhood friendly overthinker, Matt Niehaus. He says, "Happy to have you back, guys. #Haas. We've been seeing you in Discord. Can't wait to overthink this slate with you." But yeah, as I mentioned at the top, this show is sponsored by Prize Picks. It is a daily prop-based contest. No sharks, no optimizers or mass entries. It is completely up to you. You're playing against yourself. You can go up to 5-player lineup, and it can net you 10x your entry fee. Use your knowledge across multiple sports. You can do a one with hockey, with football, with baseball. And the cool thing is, if you click the link in the description, of the show, you get 1 month free of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $100 deposit match when you sign up and make a deposit with Prize Picks. Again, not available in New Jersey. Of course, the 2 I gave you yesterday hit. I wish I was able to do that, but I have a couple more for you today. On Prize Picks, they have Andrei Svechnikov line at 3 shots on goal. I like the over there. And they also have Mikko Rantanen lined at 3 shots a goal. I like the over there as well. The Chicago Blackhawks left defensemen are about some of the worst I've ever seen. Yes, they're still professional and they would do laps around us, but it is not good for a professional hockey team. So let's get to the next game of the night. We have the Columbus Blue Jackets with a 2.5 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.6 total. Elvis Merzlikins is out. He is out with an illness. Daniil Tarasov is confirmed. Freddie Anderson is confirmed. On the Blue Jackets side, looks about status quo. Kent Johnson got sent down to make room for an emergency backup. He was probably going to be a healthy scratch anyway. This is the debut of Johnny Gaudreau. He's skating with Boone Jenner and Patrick Laine, another very good offensive line that may have issues defensively. On the Carolina side, the top line's fully correlated and super cheap and not getting a lot of ownership here. I think there is some stuff to like on both sides. What are you seeing in this game?
Yeah. The Carolina 1 ownership kind of surprised me just because they are fully correlated and cheap. Like that's kind of the reason, right? Like we talked about how there are a lot of similar lines, and yes, they are priced like kind of in the same range of Boston 2, Toronto 2. We'll get to Seattle a little bit later, but Carolina 1 being fully correlated, top line, top power play, you dream about those. And going into Columbus, like this is a really good matchup. I know there is a lot of excitement for, Johnny Gaudreau got signed, Kent Johnson, he got sent to the AHL. But he's, it seems like
transaction, I think.
So yeah, it seems like he'll be back in a game or two or something like that. They had to emergency recall someone. But Columbus was one of the worst defensive teams in the league last year. And in the offseason, they added Johnny Gaudreau and Eric Branson and lost Oliver Bjorkstrand, who was probably their best defensive forward outside of, or certainly their best defensive winger. Maybe their best defensive forward, including Boone Jenner. Like that Columbus top line, the duo of Jenner and Laine, 3.4 expected goals against per 60 minutes last year. The only thing that saved them was Elvis Merzlikins actually playing well behind them. But Merzlikins is going to be out tonight. They said he's really sick, so that it looks like it's probably going to be, I believe it's Daniil Tarasov that might be starting, or that is starting here for Columbus. AHL goalie for them because Joonas Korpisalo is also injured. So you got an AHL goalie on a team that I don't think is going to improve, has improved much defensively and was one of the worst defensive teams last year going on the road into Carolina. I really do like that Carolina top line. See, like the thing is we have them at 7.4%. Like even if that comes up to like 9-10%, I don't care. Like I really don't. I mean, the one concern about Carolina is that they do tend to spread out ice time, right? I think they only had one forward over 19 minutes a game last year, whereas if you look at the McDavid, McKinnon, Draisaitl, Matthews, like those guys are probably going to play 21 plus minutes. Like McDavid and Draisaitl might play 23, 24 some nights.
Price though.
Yeah, you won't. Yeah, that's the thing is you won't see Sebastian Aho get there, but it's reflected in the price. And the Carolina top line was unreal last year. Like this particular trio, 3.7 expected goals per 60 minutes, 4.5 actual goals per 60 minutes. And I think if Seth Jarvis had played the entire season on the top line, like Lucas Raymond did over in Detroit, Jarvis would have been Rookie of the Year. He still scored 23 or 24 goals, only playing 65 games or something like that, playing most of his time on the second and third lines. Maybe the ice time thing changes a little bit because they did lose Trocheck and, can Kotkaniemi replace his minutes? That remains to be seen. But yeah, I really do love Carolina 1 here tonight. I could imagine they'll be one of my higher exposed lines. Carolina 2, Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, Necas, they're fully correlated on the second power play unit. It makes me wonder how Carolina is going to they're going to divvy up these power play minutes, right? Because I can't imagine a heavy like 65-35 with Svechnikov and Natchez on the second unit. You know what I mean?
It's kind of weird that they put Andre Kasha on the top unit.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of skill set that they have. Like Carolina's a pretty smart team, smart coaching staff. So, I could easily see them seeing something that I don't with what Kasha can do. But, Carolina too, fully correlated. They're not going to have a super tough matchup going into that Columbus second line either. So, like they have a little bit of negative leverage, but it's nothing really too bad on DraftKings or FanDuel. They are cheaper. So, if you don't want to pay that $16K or whatever, just drop down to the second line. I think that's perfectly fine. But I really do like Carolina 1 here tonight. They're one of my favorite lines on this entire slate, especially with Merzlikins out. Like with like Tarasov is supposed to be the goalie of the future. It's one of those things I'll believe it when I see it, especially when it comes to goaltending. So Carolina 1 for me here. On the Columbus side, like it's a pretty brutal matchup. Carolina had one of the best penalty kills in the league last year, or I think the best. Yep. And I think through the first 65 games, they're on like an historic pace for fewest power play goals allowed. Like there will be games where they outscore the opponent shorthanded compared to the opponent's power play, right? So there isn't a ton that I really like from Columbus, but there is pretty good leverage on them. If I was going to play any Columbus line, it would be the top line. I know they're expensive on DraftKings. They're over 18K. They're a little bit more reasonable on FanDuel. Just over 20. It is an expensive top line. It's the fourth most expensive line on the DraftKings slate. But you get 2 out of the 3 guys on the power play. But again, I'm not sure how much that means going into Carolina. So, and facing off against Jordan Staal and Jesper Fast, that shutdown line. I know they lost Nino Niederreiter, but gaining Paul Stastny, he's a little bit older, but he's still pretty good two-way player.
That's going to be such a slow line.
Yeah, it is. But, I think they're still going to be able to dominate some shifts. So Carolina 1, throw in some Brent Burns if you want. I really do like them here tonight. Not in so much on Columbus. I think they're just a little bit too expensive for me, especially going into a pretty bad matchup. Like they have a lower goal total than Montreal. Like let's, kind of put this into perspective. On the blue line, we were talking in chat about Brent Burns. I think this is a good fit for him in Carolina. They like their defensemen being aggressive, getting up the ice with the puck. So I do like Brent Burns just in general this season. I like him here. On this slate in particular, there isn't really a ton from the Columbus side I like. Vladislav Gavrikov, I think, is perfectly fine. On DraftKings, he's a guy that can put up, a few block, get that shot block bonus, maybe donk and assist or something like that. I think Jacob Slavin is fine from Carolina on FanDuel. I think he's way overpriced on DraftKings. I probably wouldn't play him on DK, but I think he's perfectly acceptable on FanDuel. So Slavin for me over on FanDuel, Slavin and Burns. On DraftKings, probably Gavrikov and Burns.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Columbus take. Like, yeah, they're fully correlated on the power play, but this is a brutal PK matchup, special teams matchup. I'm going to wait for them to be at home where they can, in a little bit of better matchup. This is actually probably one of the worst matchups they could have.
I don't even think they're fully correlated on power play. I'm pretty sure it's Justin Danforth instead of Boone Jenner on the top power play. So
yeah. I don't even.
If Jenner was on the top power play, it might change things, but yeah, man, just 2 out of 3, and Jenner's pretty expensive for relying on 5-on-5 production against Carolina.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll say on the Columbus side, if you're down to your last defenseman and you have fairly decent salary, like Zach Werenski is probably going to play 27 minutes tonight. 5,600 is too cheap for him. He will shoot the puck. I do like Brent Burns. Now the thing is, like, is he the player he once was? No. Is he anywhere near as good as Cale Makar? No. But like in this system for this power play, he's just going to be launching shots from the point. So from a DFS perspective, I think this is a really good landing spot for his skill set, which is basically not play defense and just be a fourth forward in a defensive spot and just shoot pucks from the point on the power play. So for 5,900, especially if you're correlating with Carolina, I do really like Burns. And I agree with you. Top line Carolina for me. they're one of my favorite lines of the night. I was shocked to see their ownership. Maybe it comes up during the day, but I don't know. Maybe the secret isn't out on Jarvis yet. We'll see.
I don't even care. Honestly, don't even care if the ownership nearly doubles from what we have projected. If they come in at 13%, I still don't care.
Yeah. So Tarasov, 7,100, DraftKings, Freddie Anderson, 8,400. Those are two price ranges where Freddie Anderson's might be a little bit too expensive for me. Tarasov, again, it's one of those guys. We always talk about targeting the Hurricanes because they come for the expected goals, stay for the shutout. They're a high shot volume team. Tarasov could potentially see a saves bonus here, but he also could give up 4 or 5 goals. You have any interest in either of these goalies?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a really cheap goalie and you don't want to take Jake Allen against Toronto, I mean, I think this is the pivot, right? This is probably where you'd have to go. But, I mean, maybe I might get to 1 or 2 Tarasovs. I think I'm going to play 20 lineups tonight. Maybe I get 1 or something like that, but he's definitely not a guy I'm targeting. I don't think I'm taking either goal. Like, I'm not targeting either goalie.
All right, let's get to the next game, and it is a doozy. We have the Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.4 total heading into Colorado. The Avalanche have a 4.2 total. They also are minus 425 favorite. Probably the biggest I've seen. I think that would be the biggest favorite last year if this was playing last year. Peter Mrazek confirmed at 7,000. Alexander Georgiev is probable at 8,700 on DraftKings. Colorado is still without Gabriel Landeskog. So their second line is going to be Nichushkin, Newhook, Evan Rodriguez. Colorado signed Evan Rodriguez so late in the offseason. That's such an underrated signing for them, especially if Newhook doesn't live up to, he doesn't take that big step forward. Evan Rodriguez can slide into that center role, but they're going to give Newhook every chance to succeed here. Top line, Lehkonen, McKinnon, Rantanen, fully correlated on the power play. Rantanen's so underpriced considering the odds at 6,700. Lehkonen 4,800. Like, Colorado's an unreal spot. They're probably going to see a bunch of the Anthony Domi Kane line, which, like, I don't even know if this is hyperbole. That might be the worst defensive line in NHL history. Like, they're going to get. I hope that, like you said, you said I hope they stay together because their expected goals against numbers are going to be absolutely wild. So I do actually have interest in that Blackhawks top line. They are a bit overpriced, but I think that's going to keep their ownership down. So I think there is some stuff to like on both sides here.
Yeah, I mean, where we got power play lines with Max Domi and Patrick Kane skating together on the top power play, I think that's probably one way or a reason to play some Chicago 1 here tonight. But just to get to that defensive point, like, that's not hyperbole. I actually went and looked up over on Evolving Hockey. It's an advanced stats website that a lot of us subscribe to. Over the last 3 seasons, Kane, Domi, Athanasiou are all in the 7th percentile or worse by expected goals against impact for their teams. They're all amongst, like, the bottom, I think it's bottom 20 out of all regular forwards. They're all playing on the same line together. Oh, there goes the steamroller. We're shaking again.
And Domi's not really an NHL center.
So to say that this might, he could be if he's on, 3rd or 4th line. Yeah. Definitely not top line going into Colorado. We don't really have a sample on the Colorado top line because Lehkonen played a lot on the second line when he got there in the trade last year, but he's good in transition. He's good defensively, likes to shoot. I cannot imagine that top line isn't going to mesh well together. So there's a ton of ownership expected on Colorado, but with Valeri Nichushkin on the second line, Cale Makar on the blue line, the Avs have at least 4 playable defensemen. I would say, like, there are a lot of ways to get different with Colorado, the Colorado top line here tonight. So, if you're kind of worried about Toronto on the road for the home opener or something like that, I think this is probably the easy pivot to go here. Really do like Colorado 1. Colorado 2 is interesting because in a small sample, Newhook and Valeri Nichushkin actually played pretty well together last year, but I agree with you. Like, I'm not sure Newhook's ready to be full-time second line center, but man, look at who they're facing, right? Like, on the other side, you got Tyler Johnson, Taylor Radish, and Jonathan Taves playing on the second line for Chicago. Like, this isn't 2015 anymore. Tyler Johnson and Jonathan Taves. I mean, I kind of feel bad for Taves because I think his is injury related, but man, they just look cooked. And Rodriguez had excellent underlying numbers last year as far as transition, scoring chances taken, scoring chances created for teammates. Like, they can carry Newhook.
He's going to be one of the best signings of the offseason, and he's like on a min-price contract.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I think Colorado's second line is, it's definitely perfectly fine to play here tonight. It's just, they might be a little bit over-owned. So if you're worried about that, stack the Colorado power play and add Nichushkin, or, maybe one of our famous Josh stacks on DraftKings, stack 6 Colorado skaters. Go ahead with that. I think, both the Colorado top 2 lines are perfectly fine. I'm not in on anything on Chicago, really. I might get to 1 or 2 top lines in my 20, but they're definitely not a line that I'm targeting. On the blue line, Seth Jones has good value, but he's probably going to be quite a bit owned. Connor Murphy, he's like the absolute block god for DraftKings defenseman. I think it's 2.2 per game over the last 3 seasons. They're going into Colorado. He's playing with Jared Tenorti, who was on waivers 2 days ago. So, like, I imagine when they're on the ice, they're going to be having to block a lot of shots. So Connor Murphy, maybe he can donk an assist and have a real good game. Maybe a little bit expensive if you're just relying on blocks, 4,100 on DraftKings. But the defenseman I'm kind of really thinking about here is Bowen Byram. He's had a lot of injury issues in his career. Came back healthy towards the end of last season, and had an unreal playoffs. We talked on the show yesterday how Philip Hedl kind of broke out in the playoffs last year. Bowen Byram was the other guy that really opened a lot of eyes. He was excellent for Colorado. And Colorado's running, I can't believe this, they're running a 3 defenseman second power play unit, it looks like. So Byram, Girard, and Taves look to all be on the second power play unit, which makes sense when you think about how good of puck movers all of Byram, Girard, and Taves actually are. Like, they are better puck movers than anything in Colorado's bottom 6. So I get it. So you're ostensibly getting some power play time with Byram. If you're, looking to get a little bit different and you don't want to play what should be higher owned, Makar and those guys, Bowen Byram coming in at 4% on DraftKings, like him here tonight.
Yeah. And 7,800 for Makar. It just feels underpriced. Like, he put up some games last year that, like, prime Brett Burns is going, damn, that was a good game. You know what I mean? Like, they just have so many playable defensemen. This team is so loaded on the blue line, but
I mean, Makar had virtually the same DK points per game as David Pastrnak.
Yeah,
just picture David Pastrnak on the blue line for Colorado. Don't think of it as a defenseman. Think of it as David Pastrnak. Like, that's how good he was.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable season. He's probably the favorite to win the Norris again. But yeah, I'm in on Colorado 1, Colorado power play. If you want to get a bit different, you know what I mean? Like, include Makar in those stacks. It's just, it's going to put you on a different path because it's like the only expense, like, not the only expensive spot, but it's the only one where, like, if you put in Makar with Colorado 1, you're going to have to, like, shave some salary elsewhere, and it's going to lower the ownership of those 4 guys. Those 4 guys may come in chalky individually, but as a group of 4, you're going to get them as much lower ownership. So yeah, I'm in on Colorado 1, Colorado power play. All the guys on the blue line, except maybe, like Eric Johnson. If you need a punt, like Josh Manson, I guess Eric Johnson's cheaper, but, like, you can play him if you want shot blocks. Otherwise, I'd spend the $100 to get Bowen Byram. Peter Mrazek, 7K. He's going to see about 624 shots. Just a matter of how many he lets in. Alexander Georgiev, 8,700. I'm happy to see him get a starter's gig. I'm not going to pay 8,700 for Alexander Georgiev.
No, I'm not. I don't think this isn't the game where I'm going to be going to grab my goalies. Even where Georgiev is cheaper on FanDuel, I would honestly probably rather play Allen or Tarasov at an even cheaper price. So yeah, no goalies for me.
I see we got a $20 super chat from Chris Worstel. He says, welcome back. Good luck tonight. Congrats on last night's winnings. I appreciate it. You've been a big supporter of the past few seasons. Thank you, and good luck tonight. We got 2 games left. We got about 10 minutes. I want to tell you about our weekly promo that we have at Stokastic. $7 for 7 days of NHL Weekly. The link is in the description below, or you can use promo code POWERPLAY. What you get with it is the NHL DFS projections, ownership projections, the top stack tool, and the premium Discord, which I think is invaluable. Like 7 days for that. Like we always, in our betting video, we talked about closing line value. The closing line value on that Discord, you can't even put a number on it. It saved me so much money, saved all of our members so much money. We lay pipe in that Discord every night. So let's get to the last 2 games of the slate. We have the Vancouver Canucks with a 2.8 total heading into Edmonton. The Oilers have a 3.7 total. Jack Campbell confirmed for the Oilers. Thatcher Demko probable for the Canucks. So just because the Edmonton Oilers have a possible goalie now, they have some depth, it doesn't shore up their blue line besides, Darnell Nurse. Cody Ceci has been good. I made a joke about his price tonight, $4,600. Pretty crazy for his price, but like Kulak, Barry, Murray, Bouchard, not the best. And I'm seeing almost no ownership on the Canucks here. Now, we talked about it ad nauseum last year. The Canucks are one of those teams that the majority of their goals came on the power play. And if you look at the second line here, Pettersson, Hoglander, Kuzmenko, 2 guys on the power play. They're cheap. They're not getting any ownership. Oilers, not the best penalty kill. I think there's a lot to like on both sides in this game.
Yeah, the point about the Oilers penalty kill is probably a pretty good one. 4th worst by expected goals against over the final 2/3 of the season last year, and they didn't really add anybody that'll help a lot with that penalty kill. And Vancouver's power play was really, really good. So I'm with you on Vancouver. I see almost no ownership on Pettersson, Hoglander, Kuzmenko. Hoglander is a guy I think is going to have kind of a breakout here this year. He's been 3rd, 4th line quite a bit for the team over the last couple seasons, but really great underlying numbers. He's getting 2 talented guys to play with. I really like Miller, Besser, and Pearson actually played pretty well. Once Bruce Boudreau was hired last year, over the final 200 minutes, 3.0 expected goals for, 2.1 against, like they were pretty good defensively. So I think that's kind of the one thing that would make me just a little bit nervous about playing Edmonton top line is that Vancouver top line is actually, improved a lot defensively once Bruce Boudreau got hired. But the second and third lines from Edmonton, I don't think are going to be that great defensively. And that's who Pettersson and Kuzmenko and those guys are going to get a lot of run with. So one of my favorite fillery mid-price type stacks here today is, that Pettersson line. And because of the ownership, if you're playing 20 or 50 lineups, you don't need a lot to get way over the field. So I'm probably going to end up with a few Pettersson lineups here tonight. No problem playing Edmonton, obviously. The one thing I would just mention here is that they tend to leave McDavid and Draisaitl on for the entire power play. So even if you see maybe Dylan Holloway might get secondary power play minutes or something like that, that's probably not the way it's going to work. You're going to see, Draisaitl and McDavid on, and then they're just going to switch 2 wingers and the defenseman. So I don't have a problem playing Edmonton 1, but honestly, if I'm tiering Colorado, Toronto, Edmonton, it's Colorado 1, Toronto 2, Edmonton 3 for those elite lines here tonight. So I'm just more excited about playing the Pettersson line. So Pettersson, Kuzmenko, Quinn Hughes is interesting on the blue line because he's not a guy with great peripherals, but there was a couple of reports in offseason interviews with him that the team and him want him to focus more on shooting, to become more of a dual threat, like Cale Makar is, or Morgan Riley turned into, I think might be the better comp. So you don't have to play him with a Vancouver line. I think Hughes is fine playing by himself if he can get, a few more shots. So I think, obviously Edmonton 1, Edmonton power play, more than acceptable to play here tonight, but it's the Pettersson line from Vancouver that I'm keying on more.
Yeah, 2 things on the Edmonton side. One, Connor McDavid's under 8,000. His ownership right now is 20%. He's going to be higher than that. Just like these elite guys, like The ownership projections are very, very good, but these elite guys, they're just always going to be a little bit higher. 2, he's playing with Jesse Puljujarvi. Connor McDavid's best numbers at 5-on-5 are with Jesse Puljujarvi. So, if I'm getting away from the power play stack and don't want to get in, Draisaitl with him, you full stack Edmonton 1 here. So no issue there. I always worry about Puljujarvi's minutes because I feel like if he takes one bad shift, the coach sends him to Narnia. But hopefully they give him some run here. I agree with you on Vancouver too. I'm a Hoglander guy. I know he's not on the top power play, but Kuzmenko top power play, 3,300 on DraftKings. He shoots the puck. He's got a good sense of humor. Everything I like in a DFS player. Shoots the puck, sense of humor, checks all the boxes. I'm in on Quinn Hughes on the blue line. Not interested in Tyson Barrie outside of power play stacking. Otherwise, it will be Darnell Nurse.
So I think the problem with Tyson Barrie is he could end up just playing like 17 minutes, right? He did that a lot last year. And he'll split power play time with Evan Bouchard. Like, he's just a more expensive Chris Weidman, let's face it. And on a better team, I think that's part of it. But yeah, I think I'd almost just rather play Bouchard straight up for the more expensive, for a bigger price.
Same. So let's get to that last game of the night, a game we would not look forward to last season, but I think this one is a little bit spicy here. We got the Seattle Kraken with the 2.6 total going into Anaheim. The Ducks have a 3.0 total. That has come down a little bit throughout the day. They were at 3.2 for a bit. Philip Grubauer is probable. Now, I think John Gibson may play tonight. I think he had a head injury. They just took him out. He ended up finishing, he took a puck to the head, but finished the period. I think they took him out as precaution. We'll have to wait and see. Ducks don't really confirm guys until warm up, so we might not know until 9:30 p.m. Eastern. But I have a hunch that Gibson's going to start tonight. Ducks added a bunch of guys. Kraken added a bunch of guys. The Ducks added Frank Vetrano, Mason McTavish, Ryan Strome. They revamped their middle six. On the Seattle side, Matty Beniers, rookie center, is going to see some top line action here. Oliver Bjorkstrand, one of our favorite DFS plays, now in Seattle. Interesting line mates there. They're super cheap, but I don't know. There's stuff to like on both sides here. I do worry about some ownership on the Ducks side, but I kind of like this game on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, the ownership's a little bit high on the top line for Anaheim, but, Zegras and Henrique, they had their best numbers when they were playing together last year, right? Like, that was a duo that was really, really good for the Ducks. 3.3 expected goals generated per 60 minutes, 3.7 actual goals generated per 60 minutes, lots of offensive zone starts as well. Like, they're going to be put in a position to succeed. I don't mind playing them here tonight, especially, a little bit of negative leverage. I don't care if they come in at 6 or 7%. I think this is a pretty good matchup, especially when you look at the Seattle goaltending. I think Seattle is going to show themselves to be a good defensive team, but I think it's the goaltending that really could let them down. So I do like that Anaheim top line here tonight. I would probably play them over the second line, even though the second line for Anaheim looks good to me. Terry, McTavish, and Strome, right? Like, Troy Terry had his breakout season, and I'm not worried about a massive regression. Like, I don't think he's going to crash down to 16 goals or something like that. I think he's a 25-plus goal guy. Mason McTavish could easily be the rookie of the year. He's kind of, again, another Swiss Army knife, can kind of do everything. And Ryan Strome is a really, really good playmaker. So I think that line looks pretty good to me. I just kind of worry about three guys that weren't, McTavish was on the team last year, but it was only for 9 games or whatever. These are 3 guys that weren't on the same team last year, all coming together, playing their first regular season game. So I would probably rather just take a little bit of a safer bet, playing Henrique and Zegras, throw Vetrano on there if you want to. They're probably going to go against the third and fourth lines for Seattle. That's how Anaheim typically ran their lines. Now, they do have new players, so we don't know if that's going to stay consistent from last year. But if they get some depth, the depth matchups, I really do like Anaheim's top line here tonight. On the Seattle side, like, every single one of their lines are over-owned because of the pricing. If I were just to go and pick one line, it would probably be that top line of Beniers, Burakovsky, McCann. Like McCann is a very good dual threat forward, can score goals and can play make for his line mates. Andre Burakovsky is probably one of the more underrated offensive talents in the league. Do it all, like transition, score goals, set up teammates. Just a really good offensive player. And Matty Beniers, I think he's another guy that could be rookie of the year, showed real well at the end of last season. So, all the Seattle lines are really going to be owned. And I get that maybe you have to go cheap because you're going super expensive Colorado or something like that. But the line that I like the best from Seattle, especially if they do get that Isaac Lundestrom matchup from Anaheim, I like the Beniers, Burakovsky, McCann lineup or line quite a bit. And as I mentioned, on the other side for Anaheim, it's the Zegras-Henrique duo for me.
Yeah, not much to add there to your point. Interesting that Klingberg, 4,500 top power play here coming in, pretty low owned. Don't mind him. Justin Schultz on the other side, 2,600 power play quarterback, also coming in low owned. I think there's both options there. We got a couple minutes left. Just got to remind you of our shows coming up next. We actually have a show after us today, and NBA DFS First Look at 5 p.m. with the NHL Shark himself, Greg Ehrenberg, who shipped like life in that showdown game overseas, and Josh Engelman. So NBA season starting soon, so check out that show tonight at 5. Let's talk a little bit about our hat trick picks and our goalies. Like, I honestly think one of my favorite goalie plays is John Gibson, just because of that uncertainty that he may not play. I don't think people are going to want to wait around until 9:30 p.m. Eastern to lock in a goalie. He is fairly cheap. Kraken have a 2.6 total. Don't mind him there. There really isn't much like goal. It's either like really cheap or really expensive tonight. Like Darcy Kemper, maybe at 7,900 on DraftKings. Other than that, you're really just going super cheap, or you're picking an expensive goalie in a favorable matchup. And for me, my hat trick pick, I'm going to go spicy again. One of these times, King Spice is going to hit. I'm going Andrei Kuzmenko.
Ooh, first NHL regular season game. That'd be a pretty good debut. Hopefully he does, because I'm definitely going to have him in some of my lineups. Yeah, for a cheap goalie tonight, for me, it would be Jake Allen at home for Montreal. For an expensive goalie, it's probably Darcy Kemper. I don't think I'm going to get to that Matt Murray, Georgiev tier. For me, it would probably be Kemper going up against Boston. And my hat trick pick is Monsieur Seth Jarvis from Carolina.
I knew it was going to be that, so I was like, no Carolina. Yeah, so for my steamrolling colleague, Slim Cliffy, I am Josh Harris. We will be back tomorrow. Biggest slate of the season. Good luck tonight. Excited to be back, and remember to hit that like and subscribe on the way out. Helps us out a lot, and good luck tonight.
Good luck, everyone.